Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
It's emerged that the government offered Nissan around £60 million if it built new car models at its plant in Sunderland, including the X-Trail, which Nissan said yesterday will now be made abroad. The offer was outlined in a letter from the business secretary to the then head of Nissan in October 2016, a few months after the EU referendum. Well, our business correspondent Coletta Smith is outside the Nissan plant in Sunderland. And Coletta, there's been another twist in this tale in the last half hour or so.
Yes, there has been. Straight after the referendum, Nissan were one of the first companies to be banging on the door of number 10 to try and get reassurances about their position here in the UK. But until now, we didn't know the contents of that letter. The government, though, say that they dealt with Nissan like they would do any other company, and that now that things have changed, Nissan will have to reapply for any funding they want, given that the plant in Sunderland here now has different plans for the future. There was much speculation, a bribe, a bung, or just an extra commitment. The government and Nissan were tight-lipped at the time. But this weekend something shifted. Nissan changed their minds. The new X-Trail SUV won't be built here, but in Japan. The company blamed falling diesel sales, but said Brexit uncertainty was a factor too. So just what did the government promise them 2 years ago? The letter says they were working on a package of support for research and development, and that work continues, but I understand this could amount to additional support of up to £80 million. It goes on to say it is contingent too on a positive decision by the Nissan board to allocate production of the Qashqai and X-Trail models to the Sunderland plant.
Last Friday.
The minister who signed that letter 2 years ago defended his decision today.
And while I'm pleased that the decision taken in 2016 to build the Qashqai and to secure the Sunderland plant is unchanged, it's deeply disappointing to me and to the workforce that the extra jobs that would have come from the X-Trail will no longer be available.
The X-Trail is now going to be built at the other side of the world, and at the end of the day shift, tensions are running high.
There's nothing wrong in that, dear. Who wants to buy a diesel car when it's a very low production car? Who would want to buy it anyway when the phasing out diesels?
Is that how it feels?
That's how it feels in there.
This is all about diesel.
Yes, it's nothing to do with Brexit at all.
Do you think it's disappointing for staff that they're not going to be working on that project?
Possibly, but there's plenty more projects that could be coming up, so it's always a positive.
But it would be a big thing for this region if this place went. I mean, you see in the cars coming out, there's about 7,000 people working there at least, and then there's all the offshots around the area. I would say there's hundreds of small places around here that supply Nissan.
Whether the change of plan was due to worries over the future of the UK or the future of diesel, the government say they hadn't yet handed over any of that extra cash to Nissan. Coletta Smith, BBC News in Sunderland.
The Business Secretary, Greg Clark, says it is deeply disappointing that Nissan has done a U-turn on its promise to build a new car in Sunderland with the loss of more than 700 planned jobs. Speaking to MPs, he said the Japanese company would have to reapply for £60 million worth of financial assistance that had been controversially offered by the government. Here's our business editor, Joel Hills.
Nissan has been in North East England for more than 30 years. The company is the biggest employer in Sunderland, and its decisions to scrap plans to build the new X-Trail has caused a stir.
We've built a new generation of workers around car plant making, and now we have nothing else really in this area. It's a sad day for Sunderland and it's a sad day for the UK.
You know, we've lost so many industries, so many businesses.
The boss of Nissan sealed the deal to bring new models to Sunderland at Downing Street 4 months after the referendum. The details were kept secret, but the government has now published the letter written to Nissan's chief executive on the 21st of October 2016. In it, the business secretary, Greg Clark, pledged additional support of up to £80 million, contingent on a positive decision by the Nissan board to allocate production of the Qashqai and the X-Trail models to the Sunderland plant. Grants totalling £61 million were later awarded, although only £2.6 million has been paid out to date. Nissan pulled the X-Trail project from Sunderland in response to a slump in diesel sales across Europe, but the company said ongoing uncertainty about Brexit didn't help. The business minister told the Commons that Nissan would have to reapply for financial support.
While I'm disappointed that the new jobs associated with the X-Trail will not now come to Sunderland, I'm pleased that the plant will benefit from substantial new investment in the existing models and that the decision to continue with the vital investment in the Qashqai, Leaf and Duke and the jobs associated with them is unaffected.
But Labour said Nissan's decision is proof that businesses are losing confidence in the government's handling of the Brexit process.
Without real assurances from the Secretary today and a firm commitment from him to take no deal off the table, it's hard not to think that managed decline is indeed the government's plan.
Spectacularly ignored is that Nissan and the UK automotive industry back the deal that the Prime Minister has negotiated. It achieves what they need. No disorderly Brexit on the 29th of March, a transition period and a commitment to no tariffs, no quotas, no rules of origin checks at the border.
Sunderland is Britain's biggest car plant, and 2 cars a minute will continue to roll off the production line here, for now at least. But some of Nissan's key concerns about Brexit remain unaddressed.
So on those key concerns, Joel, it was clearly hinged upon the possibility of a no-deal Brexit, right? So today HMRC issued some hints about what might happen with ports and airports if that did happen. And what did they say?
Well, I think some of this is quite important, Mary. If you think, take Nissan, 5 million car parts a day arrive at that factory in Sunderland, most of them from the EU. It's saying what happens in the event of no deal at the border. If there are delays, then suddenly production grinds to a halt. They're worried. Pharmaceutical companies are worried. Retailers, supermarkets are all worried. What HMRC said is it offered some clarity today. Basically what it's doing, Mary, it's offering the reassurance that the whole customs paperwork process will be loaded online. So, in effect, there'll be no checks at the border. Lorries and all the paperwork will be completed. Lorries, in theory, will flow through Dover largely uninterrupted, as they do today, if the system works as it is supposed to. They'll only be stopped if you have to carry out some checks. Now, Dover, the Port of Dover, said this evening it is confident that traffic will continue to flow freely based on what HMRC has said into the UK through Dover. We still don't know, though, Mary, what will happen to traffic going in the other way. Nissan can be more reassured that it will get the car parts it needs, but when it comes to exporting its cars to the continent, we just don't know yet.
OK. Joel, thank you.
Now, Nissan have told the government that the United Kingdom must come together and resolve the question of how we plan to trade with the European Union in future. The Business Secretary, Greg Clark, said that advice should be listened to, as he confirmed that the Japanese car giant has abandoned plans to build the X-Trail model at its Sunderland plant. Ministers had offered Nissan £60 million in a bid to attract the investment. Now, the company will have to reapply for the money. Our North of England correspondent Claire Fallon has spent the day outside the UK's largest car plant.
It's the UK's biggest car factory. 7,000 workers in Sunderland, making 500,000 cars a year. Little wonder, after the Brexit referendum, ministers were shouting from the rooftops that Nissan would bring more jobs here. A commitment to post-Brexit Britain. But now it seems that came at a cost. And with Nissan going colder on Brexit, changing its plans, the details are finally out.
While I'm disappointed that the new jobs associated with the X-Trail will not now come to Sunderland, I'm pleased that the plant will benefit from substantial new investment in the existing models. While the decision was made on broader business grounds, Nissan commented on the need for us to come together and to resolve the question of our future trading relationship with the EU.
Sunderland was meant to be the new home of the Nissan X-Trail, meaning more jobs and new investment. But over the weekend, we learned production will be in Japan instead. The reason? Not enough people buying diesel cars, we were told, though a letter to staff also mentioned Brexit. This morning, the union came out of its meeting with Nissan bosses in Sunderland insisting Brexit was not the thing, just a warning for the future to make the government sit up and listen.
It's a game of chess and a game of Monopoly they're all playing, aren't they, all these companies? And when they heed the warnings, it's quite clear that all these companies want what's best for their industry and their company. And when we say about job losses, no, we've been given real reassurances that the Qashqai, the new generation Qashqai and the new generation Duke will be rolling off these lines in the very near future.
But you describe it as being a game of chess. Isn't the reality that your members are the pawns in this game?
Sadly, it could be looked upon like that, but that's why we're here at the table speaking with Nissan, trying to demand answers, and today's answers were given and we're very comfortable with them answers.
This afternoon, the game of chess got supercharged. A letter, secret till now, made public by the government. It was sent to Nissan in 2016, telling the car maker it would get up to £80 million in support on condition the Qashqai and the X-Trail are built in Sunderland. In the letter, the government suggested it would make sure Nissan isn't adversely affected by the UK's future relationship with the EU.
I would guess there's a few people having sleepless nights at the moment.
And there's the point. For some, this is no game. It's about jobs and livelihoods. Alan runs a garage not far from the Nissan plant. He told me he voted to leave. Now he's changed his mind.
There's nothing going to happen overnight, that's for sure. But what's going to happen in the future, these are the things people need to worry about. You know, it's a big operation to move. It hasn't stopped previous operations, they haven't moved abroad.
But not everyone's switched sides. In the referendum, Sunderland was more than 60% Brexit. And you can't help feel for William, who used to work down the pits, all this does nothing to restore his confidence.
No, they don't care. They're not bothered about things like up here. They're not bothered. They don't realise what it's like for people living on benefits with no money and living on beans on toast all week. You know, they don't understand it.
Nissan says it's committed to Sunderland, that other models will keep being built here. But with promised new jobs now going somewhere else, some will fear what next.
Well, our business editor, Siobhan Kennedy, is here. Siobhan.
Well, John, as we saw in Claire's piece just then, the government has finally been forced today to publish the details of that reassurance, something that everyone's been wanting to get their hands on for the past 2 years, that the government has steadfastly refused to publish on the grounds of commercial confidentiality. Well, we now know why. Because they promised, it turns out, Nissan 80 million in guarantees. We now know that that was then scaled back to 61 million after an independent assessment, funding for things like R&D, skills, training, technology, new electronic technology for batteries. And we now know from Greg Clark today that they've only so far drawn 2.6 million of that down. And the sting is that if they want any more, to apply for any more up to that 61 million, Greg Clark has today said they're going to have to go through that process again and apply for more the formal way.
So what are Nissan themselves saying tonight?
Well, they have said tonight, they've issued a very short statement saying they continue to have open dialogue with the government and that they would discuss any implications with them for financial support. Clearly, both sides, John, tonight are feeling a bit wounded. And while it's true this is all about diesel sales, it's true also that Brexit has had a big impact here, has been wreaking havoc on British car sales. We learned last week that investment in Britain's car industry is at an all-time low. It hasn't been this low since the financial crisis 10 years ago. And while jobs are not going at Nissan, they are going at Jaguar Land Rover and at Ford. And we've had big warnings from the bosses of Vauxhall, Toyota. They've all issued stark warnings about future production. Now, it says something that one industry source told us tonight, that they were actually quite pleased with the Nissan announcement because they've gone on to commit to 2 other big key production models, and that actually they thought the news from Nissan could have been worse.
Siobhan Kennedy.